Wings of Fire by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Orientation, Part 3. I was unwilling to face reality. I had put my heart and soul into Nandi. That it would not be used was something beyond my comprehension. I was disappointed and disillusioned. In this period of confusion and uncertainty, memories from my childhood came back to me, and I discovered new meanings in them. Pakshi Shastri used to say, "Seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free." As the Bible says, "Ask, and you shall receive." It did not happen immediately, but it happened nevertheless. One day, Dr. Mediratha called me. He inquired about the state of our hovercraft. When told that it was in perfect condition to be flown, he asked me to organize a demonstration for an important visitor the next day. No VIP was scheduled to visit the laboratory during the next week as far as I knew. However, I communicated Dr. Mediratha's instructions to my colleagues, and we felt a new surge of hope. The next day, Dr. Mediratha brought a visitor to our hovercraft, a tall, handsome, bearded man. He asked me several questions about the machine. I was struck by the objectivity and clarity of his thinking. "Can you give me a ride in the machine?" he inquired. His request filled me with joy. Finally, here was someone who was interested in my work. We took a 10-minute ride in the hovercraft, a few centimeters above the ground. We were not flying, but were definitely floating in the air. The visitor asked me a few questions about myself, thanked me for the ride, and departed. But not before introducing himself. He was Professor M.G.K. Menon, Director of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, or TIFR. After a week, I received a call from the Indian Committee for Space Research to attend an interview for the post of rocket engineer. We took a 10-minute ride in the hovercraft, a few centimeters above the ground. We were not flying, but were definitely floating in the air. The visitor asked me a few questions about myself, thanked me for the ride, and departed. But not before introducing himself. He was Professor M.G.K. Menon, Director of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, or TIFR. After a week, I received a call from the Indian Committee for Space Research, or INCOSPER, to attend an interview for the post of rocket engineer. All I knew about Indian Committee for Space Research at the time was that it was formed out of the TIFR talent pool at Bombay, now Mumbai, to organize space research in India. I went to Bombay to attend the interview. I was unsure about the type of questions I would have to face at the interview. There was hardly any time to read up or talk to any experienced person. Lakshmana Shastri's voice, quoting from the Bhagavad Gita, echoed in my ears. All beings are born to delusion, overcome by the dualities which arise from wish and hate. But those men of virtuous deeds in whom sin has come to an end, freed from the delusion of dualities, worship me, steadfast in their vows. I reminded myself that the best way to win was to not need to win. The best performances are accomplished when you are relaxed and free of doubt. I decided to take things as they came. Since neither Professor M.G.K. Menon's visit nor the call for an interview had been of my making, I decided this was the best attitude to take. I was interviewed by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai along with Professor M.G.K. Menon and Mr. Sharaf, then the Deputy Secretary of the Atomic Energy Commission. As I entered the room, I sensed their warmth and friendliness. I was almost immediately struck by Dr. Sarabhai's warmth. There was none of the arrogance or the patronizing attitudes which interviewers usually display when talking to a young and vulnerable candidate. Dr. Sarabhai's questions did not probe my existing knowledge or skills. Rather, they were an exploration of the possibilities I was filled with. He was looking at me as if in reference to a larger whole. The entire encounter seemed to me a total moment of truth in which my dream was enveloped by the larger dream of a bigger person. I was advised to stay back for a couple of days. However, the next evening I was told about my selection. I was to be absorbed as a rocket engineer at Incospur. This was a breakthrough a young man like myself dreamed of. My work at Incospur commenced with a familiarization course at the TIFR Computer Center. The atmosphere here was remarkably different from that at DTD and P-Air. Labels mattered very little. There was no need for anyone to justify his position or to be at the receiving end of the other's hostility. Sometime in the latter half of 1962, Incospur took the decision to set up the equatorial rocket launching station at Thumba, a sleepy fishing village near Trivandrum, now Thiruvananthapuram, in Kerala. Dr. Chitnis of the Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad, had spotted it as a suitable location as it was very close to the Earth's magnetic equator. This was the quiet beginning of modern rocket-based research in India. The site selected at Thumba lay between the railway line and the sea coast, covering a distance of about 2.5 kilometers and measuring about 600 acres. Within this area stood a large church whose site had to be acquired. Land acquisition from private parties is always a difficult and time-consuming process, especially in densely populated places like Kerala. In addition, there was the delicate matter of acquiring a site of religious significance. The collector of Trivandrum, then K. Madhavan Nair, executed this task in a most tactful, peaceful and expeditious manner with the blessings and cooperation of Right Reverend Dr. Derera, who was the Bishop of Trivandrum in 1962. Soon R.D. John, the executive engineer of the Central Public Works Department CPWD, had transformed the entire area. The St. Mary Magdalene Church housed the first office of the Thumba Space Center. The prayer room was my first laboratory. The bishop's room was my design and drawing office. To this day, the church is maintained in its full glory and at present houses the Indian Space Museum. Very soon after this, I was asked to proceed to America for a 6-month training program on sounding rocket launching techniques at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, work centers. I took some time off before going abroad and went to Rameshwaram. My father was very pleased to learn about the opportunity that had come my way. He took me to the mosque and organized a special namaz in thanksgiving. I could feel the power of God flowing in a circuit through my father to me and back to God. We were all under the spell of the prayer. One of the important functions of prayer, I believe, is to act as a stimulus to creative ideas. Within the mind are all the resources required for successful living. Ideas are present in the consciousness which, when released and given scope to grow and take shape, can lead to successful events. God, our Creator, has stored within our minds and personalities great potential strength and ability. Prayer helps us to tap and develop these powers. Ahmed Jalaluddin and Samsuddin came to see me off at Bombay Airport. It was their first exposure to a big city like Bombay, just as I myself was about to have my first exposure to a megacity like New York. Jalaluddin and Samsuddin were self-reliant, positive, optimistic men who undertook their work with the assurance of success. It is from these two persons that I drew the core creative power of my mind. My sentiments could not be contained, and I could feel the mist of tears in my eyes. Then Jalaluddin said, "Azad, we have always loved you and we believe in you. We shall always be proud of you." The intensity and purity of their faith in my capabilities broke my last defenses, and tears welled up in my eyes.